couple of them that need a little extra boost, but they still work. I only have one more class.
So we are looking at today's lesson, or Friday's lesson. Sorry. We are looking at Friday's lesson, which is lesson on refraction. So, just to kind of get us started here, what would you say is the big picture of this lesson?
That when light is refracted, it changes.
In what way?
In any way, depending on how it's being refracted. It can grow larger, it can grow smaller, magnify or minimize. It can change color through filters. It can bend, it can break. So that is the goal.
Okay. Are there any scientific processes that students will be asked to develop throughout this lesson?
For this one, no, it's mostly vocabulary.
Okay, mostly vocabulary.
Yeah. I'll show those on those slides that I plan on going over.
Joe, do you have anything to add?
I think this comes out more when we look at how it's tested, but one of the key things I think is they have to really be able to envision and predict the path of light.
Yep.
Whether we're talking about reflection or refraction, they should be able to see it, visualize it, draw it, and predict where the light's going to go, right? That kind of a ability to do that, to visualize it, is key to their being able to respond to questions correctly and analyze scenarios.
Honestly, I didn't even know. Did this standard get altered at all during the streamlining process?
No, it's B that got messed up, or fixed, or whatever.
Circuits? Where did they change the circuits?
They took out comparing parallel and series, although there are questions would imply
Did they
they're
take that
still
out?
doing
I didn't think that was ever
No,
actually
it now only says open and closed. That's the stuff. But we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see how they actually test it. I haven't looked at it to see how it's tested in 2018, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Previously, that's not what they did.
I just shared Joel Demers on his slides.
Yeah, I saw that you shared that.
But it did? Cool.
Yeah.
And these are ones that Liberty and I did last year. And it seemed to work really well.
So, mentioning the standard, we're focusing on standard 56C, which says demonstrate that light travels in a straight line until it strikes an object and is reflected, or travels through one medium to another and is refracted, right?
Yep.
And so, what particular parts of that standard? I mean, obviously we're focusing on refraction. So, if the student had to, if we had to say what particular parts of the standard are we focusing on, what would a student need to be able to walk away knowing and being able to do from that standard in relation to refraction?
Really, they would need to know and understand the definition and identify examples.
Of what? Of refraction?
Of refraction.
Okay. And so what definition of refraction are you giving them? I see you just I know you just emailed it, but
yeah, with the Marzanos, it's not so much that I'm giving them a definition, but they're coming up with their own.
What definition do you want them to end with?
The definition I would want them to end with is when light passes through a new medium, it changes. Essentially, I'm keeping it simple. It changes.
When light travels through a medium, it changes.
Yeah.
Is there any other definition that they might see that might be helpful for them to know, or any other rephrasing of that might be helpful for them to know?
It bends.
Okay. Yep. So
that's another big one.
So so it might be helpful to rephrase that, so the kids are seeing both of those. If they might see that it changes, or they might see that it bends. So I think it's important that kids understand both of those.
I would add to that the term, like the key terms that within that standard that distinguish between the two, reflection and refraction, is strikes an object and travels through.
Yep.
So either passes through or travels through should be in every kid's rephrase definition.
Yep. So so if you had a CFS for a definition, right, it would say that light travels through a medium and bends or changes.
Yeah.
Right. Do you want them to know, I guess, why light bends? In a sense, when it passes through, like, are we going too deep if we ask that question? Like,
I like to touch on those deeper explanations that they're going to hit later on in science, even though it's not the direct correlation to the 5th grade standard, because for 5th graders particularly, the why can be very helpful, even if they don't necessarily understand the why itself. Knowing that there is a why and a reason why it does this helps them, from my experience.
I don't think it's so much the why necessarily as it is the characteristics in different situations, right? So like because especially refraction is hard because there are so many different permutations of what can happen depending on what it's passing through.
Yeah.
That I think the predicting the path of light is more important than being able to say the why it went in that direction.
Okay.
Does that make sense? They could certainly explain it, but they also just need to know intuitively where it's going to go.
Yeah. And then the last thing I was thinking about is what happens when, and this is also based off of looking at your exit ticket too. Like do we want students to know what happens when it passes through different mediums, right? So I think that should also like be very key part of like what we want students to be able to know and show.
Yeah, and it's difficult because it's really a 2-day lesson. You know, the first day is going over the definition, understanding the general concept, and the second day is the lab. Just like yesterday was the definition and understanding reflection, how it works, and then today was the lab where they actually interact with it and predict those paths.
Okay. And I'll kind of touch on that a little bit more once we get to the exit ticket, because I think you had like 4 different examples in the exit ticket that like the students would have to have the knowledge of like what actually happens when light passes through those types of things. We can discuss it a little bit further once we get to the exit ticket too, which we're approaching. So like, what are kids expected to do on your end of module and the STAR exam to be successful on questions related to the standard?
Really, it's predicting the path. It'll be given usually a flashlight or laser pointer, and it will be going somewhere.
Yep, I have that same question pulled up. So if we're looking at that question, it says some students are feeding a crab in an aquarium. They use tongs to place food directly in the front of the crab. The students look through the side of the aquarium. They notice that the image of the tongs appears to break as the tongs enter the water. Which property of light are students observing in this situation? I think like in this part, just like you said, they have to be able to predict what happens in terms of like the path of light. But like if we're talking even on like your exit tickets, you
know that definition.
Yep. And so like I think the key here is like twofold. One, what happens when light passes through a medium, and then 2, like what should I see if light is passing through a medium? Right, exactly.
Yeah, and
magnifier.
If you look at both of these 2018 questions and you look at the former ones, the biggest difference that I've been able to figure out is that they are making the answer choices all true. They're not true for the question, they're true in general. So they're all true statements, so you really have to be able to discern between them, because every single one of them is a distractor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think that's a good reflection. Yeah. I didn't think about that part, but yeah, that's definitely cool. So like that's really testing whether kids know what refraction is.
Right, so that's why I think I would underline, and I know we had the conversation about the why, but I wouldn't underline the definition. I would underline the concept. It's a big difference between being able to solidly say what the definition is and actually see
Understand
that in your
concept.
head.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And another big portion of this is it has a visual, but the visual is not showing the action.
Right. I don't think this one does either. Now that I think about it. Oh, that's not gonna work. Never mind. I don't think the other one does either.
What the other question?
Mm-hmm.
It does somewhat. This one here we were talking about?
Yes.
It does somewhat. It shows like that the light is pointing towards, like, you know.
Yeah, but when you
I
look
think
at the
there
answer
is-
choices, when you look at the answer choices,
Mhm.
they have to physically move the mirror. The mirror is not in the right place to give you the right answer. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, because it says as the mirror
Mhm.
changes direction,
Yep.
the light reaching the mirror can reach the ceiling because of the light.
Mm-hmm.
I think but it still shows that though, because it has these arrows like showing that you have to tilt the mirror to.
But if I'm a kid, I might interpret that as being a continuation of this path of light.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta think like a fifth grader.
It's so hard to so hard.
It really is.
It's true, but you
crazy.
know.
But ultimately, yeah, I think Joe's right too. But ultimately, like the concept is more important as opposed to the definition. Like what happens to light as it passes through, or like what's happening with refraction. Like refraction is like passing through, and then what happens to the light as it's passing through, right? And so like that was one of my major reflections as I was like looking through the questions there. All right, Joe, did you do the exit ticket?
I did.
All right, it might be helpful, like maybe we could, because I did the exit ticket. I'm trying to see, like we can all just like go through and just take a look at ours together. Just take like 3 minutes, take a look at ours together and see like what do we come up with as for our answers. And I'm gonna be real, like this one, like physics is not my super area of expertise. Like I did my best, but like that's also why like we're addressing things, right? So like we might be able to see some misconceptions from my work.
Okay.
So, I'm more than willing to share my answers. However, I would also say that I've already keyed Frank up to make these changes once this lesson internalization is over. There are many things in these questions that need to be changed to make these questions
I found that a lot.
accurate and correct.
Okay. Okay.
Right? But now they're coming from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not making up these questions. So we need to be more careful about where we choose our questions from.
Yep.
But nevertheless, there's some things we need to fix. So I
Yeah.
think maybe if you compare answers to what's here, right, that might.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that a lot too, because like there were statements like the straw has light, or like
when light from the straw.
Yeah, and I was like,
I'm just
that
reading
yeah,
that,
that doesn't like sit right. And so like even though I answered the questions, like I phrased it very differently from what he did in the exit ticket exemplar that he put together. So I guess we can just look at them and then like come back in about 3 minutes and like compare what we see or talk about what we see. So I'll set a timer.
Okay. How do you want to do that?
Sorry, we can just like put them out and just like look. Sorry.
I wasn't sure about the process.
I was sorry. It was kind of awkward, and I couldn't print, so like that's why mine is on a
No worries.
iPad. Like this part. Switch. what truly makes it appear larger is the shape of the wings.
Right, and so when you're looking at the other exemplar response, the one that he would be working from if he was using it, is actually
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Mm. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah, about 15 seconds.
Yep. I like it.
Yeah. So looking at our exemplars, is there anything that we want to add or I guess, is there anything that we want to add to the overall exemplar that we will use to grade kids' papers?
Mm.
Or to give kids feedback, I should say?
I don't think so.
What do we notice, if we're looking at mine and Joe's, what do we notice is the same about ours? And what do we notice is different?
Y'all both have the same general overlying principles described.
Which are what?
Bending of light, passing through, moving through, different location, appears.
Is there anything different about our exemplars?
Yeah, this one says the speed of light changes. Does that actually happen though?
That, like,
I
that
didn't think the
from-
speed changed, just the angle.
So, from what I've learned, the speed changes, which is what causes the angle to change.
So you may be right. Fifth graders aren't.
But
gonna know.
yeah.
fifth graders aren't
Yeah.
going to say that, right?
Right.
But that was just like my thinking as I was working through the lesson.
Yeah, or you have to accept the fact that it's traveling in actual waves because
Yeah.
still don't have a
Right.
solid clue about that.
Right.
Yeah, we talked
The other
about
one
it
is I'm not
yesterday.
by the speed is very could be misunderstood simply because is it really the speed or is it the frequency or is it the amplitude or what is happening?
That's a good one too. Yeah. But other than that piece, like, do they? What are the? I guess. So at this point, what are the major takeaways that a student needs to be able to do in order to get all of these questions right?
I understand that
Not think.
do.
I mean, it may be part of thinking, but not an understanding level. What should they do on here to help them?
Like annotations.
Possible.
Definitely annotations would help. They're looking for those keywords, pass through, bend or break.
Okay.
That'll definitely help them both in the answer choices and in their explanations.
Cool.
And then even specifically for the explanation, what do they have to do in their explanation to reach a satisfactory level?
They have to formulate their general concept of refraction as bending or breaking as it goes through another substance or medium.
And then what else? There's another piece to that as well.
I have no idea what
Think
you're
about
trying to
what
get
you
to.
think about what you said earlier. Like you were the one who actually brought it up first. What do kids really have to take away from these lessons? Like, what is the key thinking piece they have to take away? What do they have to be able to do in their head?
Predict the path.
There you go. So, like, I didn't do it here because I wasn't thinking to do it, but I tried to do it here, and that's one of the things I'm going to tell him is, like, dude, this picture scares me if that light's coming out of my eye.
Yeah.
You know, like, really? I don't think so. Let's fix this path of light.
Yeah.
But they really need to be able to trace it, and that's going to become more important, like, when you look at questions like, and this one's on the test. That one
was also
but this one is the
Yeah.
key, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, that is the distractor.
Yep.
Because when they don't draw it, if they're just thinking about it, they think, oh, that's logical, it went in a straight line.
Yeah.
But
But look
the
where
candle
the-
have to be up here, right? So if they're actually tracing it from the flame through the hole, and I know it has to go in a straight
Yeah.
line, that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yep.
So I think if they did that on every question that seemed most appropriate, or draw it out this way, now they might not know this diagram. I understand that. They don't have to know that specifically in order to know that it magnifies, but we want to be clear about that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect actual segue into like talking about the CFS. So looking at your CFS, you said so the criteria for success for the exit ticket is like light bends when it is refracted, light changes when it is refracted. I said that sorry, I got my each response explains that light bends when moving through a medium, explains what results when light bends because of the medium.
Yeah, I think I need a PD or
On CFS.
03 on CFS because I
think so,
really
we all
don't
do.
understand
Yeah.
what you're
that's-
looking for CFS.
Yeah, that's something I've talked to Delisa about.
I mean, criteria for success to me is my lesson objective.
Yeah.
That is the same thing. That is what it means to me.
Okay.
And I try and break it down and reword it in a different manner.
Yes, so it's
But
not,
that's what I view CFS as.
it's not the objective, it's how you're going to achieve, how kids show they've achieved the objective, right? So mine were, I had one about apply the knowledge, but that's a namby-pamby one, so we'll get rid of that. Right, that's not really that, it's a step they would have to take. But they have to explain their responses using specific vocabulary like refracted, bent, travels through, whatever. So that would be one. Like, you have to use the right vocabulary.
Yeah.
And then the other one for me was basically predict or trace the path of light. Either directly on the diagram or draw a diagram that is illustrating the scenario that's being put in front of them. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you're either doing it on the diagram or you're creating a diagram of your own that shows that you know what the path of light is or should be.
There. I went ahead and adjusted my lesson objective, and I've changed it from describe path of light to describe and diagram the path of light when refracted through a substance. Yep.
So that might change your, or it may already be there, but I would highlight it if it is for the drawing part of your Marzanos.
Yep.
Like when you're monitoring that, that drawing should include some sort of a diagram of the path of light, right? Because it's all over your Marzanos.
So I captured what all three of us said, and y'all can let me know if you think that this is appropriate to move forward with. So it says each response explains that light bends when moving through a medium using the correct vocabulary.
Okay.
Explains what results when light bends because of the medium. So, for instance, when I wrote that piece, I was thinking about, like, for instance, this part, like, this one, and then, like, the location of the penny, and then, like, the breaking of the straw, right? So why is that happening? It's happening because of light bending. And then predict or trace the path of light, either creating a diagram or using the diagram present. Yep. Right. I'm going to just copy and paste that real quick into your lesson plan.
I like that.
Oops. Hold on, give me a second. Perfect.
Bill, is this is a question, is the Marzanos the only thing you're doing that day?
That's the only thing I've got prepared to show you. I will be choosing some questions from our resources.
For like independent practice?
For independent practice, yeah.
So, Bill, another thing that
So that is
also
the actual lesson, yes.
another thing that also helps me is, like, I can share this with you. There's a CFS for the CFS. Until we have that PD.
There's too much meta going on in the school.
I know, right? Until we have that PD, or until, like, we can meet one-on-one about it, it might be helpful for you to use this. So if we, like, for instance, if we just use the CFS that we just wrote, right? We can ask these questions, right? Does it have the product of the, as the subject of the criteria statement? So for instance, in this case, the responses for their questions. The response contains blank, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Does it describe the qualities of a successful product or performance? Right? I think we all agree that it does, in a sense of, you know, what we're expecting students to write. Does it include key concepts of the standard? Does it allow for precise feedback? So if I look at my CFS and then I look at a kid's answer, can I use my CFS to give that kid feedback?
Sure.
Does it ensure proficiency once all criteria are met? So if a kid hits every marker on this CFS, will they be proficient in this particular concept?
Okay.
And then lastly, last two things, is it transferable, right? Can we use this for anything related to this, right? Or is it transferable, meaning, like, can kids take these skills and transfer it to another topic? And then lastly, is it written in student-friendly language? And I think, like, it meets this criteria for success. Do you agree, Joe? Yeah, I agree as well. And like I said, I can share this with you. I can send it to you so you have it as well.
So, one of the things I would say, Bill, I'm not sure where we're going next though, so I'm gonna let you talk instead. Sorry.
Well, go ahead and ask your question.
My question is directly related to the one I just asked you about with the Marzanos, right?
Okay.
Like, I do not believe, my own personal belief is kids will not be successful on this if Marzanos is the only thing they do that day.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not gonna throw a monkey a monkey wrench into the way you have things structured right now, so I'm not telling you you should
won't
do
be.
this. I'm making a suggestion for the next phase or for future. I made the same suggestion to Frank. You guys need to start flipping what you're doing. I'm just gonna be very directive because it's the most efficient way, right? To me, the lab you described you're gonna do on Monday should actually come first. And then they have a much more visual picture that they can apply when they're doing Marzanos. Like, you can pull off of that visual picture, like what you described you're doing today. You can pull from that visual picture to help them really get the Marzanos in a meaningful way. Do you know what I'm saying?
If that is going to be the way that you want me to do my labs, I'm going to need some help restructuring my labs so they can still be successful without having the specific content knowledge for the lab.
Got it.
I think that
is always the problem that I've had with doing it that way. I've done it that way before in the past, and I must be the way that I am setting up my labs and structuring my questions for my labs, but very few students were being successful when they don't have the content knowledge before doing the lab.
That was the key right there that I was going to point out, is like when you do exploratory labs, like you have to ask the right questions to get kids to the right point.
And I'm not good with those kinds of questions.
It's a good push.
Because I've tried it several times and it has never worked out for me.
Yeah, and and I was thinking that like earlier, and I was gonna address that towards the end. So I'm actually glad you brought that up.
That's the way Liberty wanted me to do it last year, and I did it that way for the first half of the year, and I could not. My labs were utter failures. It was chaotic. It was a mess.
Okay.
And we talked about it, and we both decided that the way that I do my labs was effective with the content knowledge that they have.
We are going
and so I went back to my old model. But if you want me to retry it again this year, I'm happy to do it. I'm just going to need help restructuring my labs and rephrasing my questions.
No worries, that's my favorite thing.
So we are going to do key moments and misconceptions, and then we will we'll go on from there. So key moments, like, what would you say is like the key point to stamp the understanding for kids? We already talked about like what the key understanding is, in the sense that they have to be able to trace the light and know that refraction is going through a medium. Where will you be able to stamp that particular part of the lesson or that particular part of the learning?
Probably at the end of the Marzanos, when I have them draw the picture and do the picture portion of the Marzanos and include the path of light. So not just, oh hey, here's a picture of water glass with a straw that's being broken, but actually have them include the arrows showing the light in their pictures for their description of what reflection is.
Okay, so would you have them? I'm just trying to think through for like my own understanding, right? So would you have them first? Like, would you first model that for them, or like how would you stamp that? So you're saying that you want to, like, they're gonna draw their own picture, right?
Yes.
And so like when they draw their own picture, they need to be able to trace the light through the medium, whatever the medium they choose, right? How, like, being that they have not seen an example of this yet until this point, how are you gonna model for how light travels through, right? Because if I'm a kid, if I'm 5th grade, like, I'm still not seeing how this works. You see what I mean? So like, how are you gonna stamp that for them?
See what you have before that.
This one before is actually a really good way to start that demonstration because it's pre-done. It's easy to see what is happening to the light. Here, that path is pre-shown.
Sorry, didn't need to do that. I apologize.
And then with the prism, it's easy to see the light being spread out. And so I can retrace those as I go through it.
I think you have a real opportunity for like this to be an option for you to show first, right? And you can kind of walk them through it.
Yeah.
But then the next one down here, this next slide, I think you have a real opportunity for that first one, or whichever one you choose, to do a think aloud for kids. Like really modeling your thinking for them as to how light bends. And tracing the path of light for them.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
So can I stamp but change that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure Marzanos is the right place to do that.
Okay.
Right, or this slide is the right place to do that. I think it is important. I think like demonstrating this is a really good, because that actually is light. That's a laser going through there. And if you're explaining that right, you can do it. I think that is good. But I think it's what he does after Marzanos that where the think aloud would come into play.
Okay.
Because that might just be, they can always go back to their definition in their drawing after the model and add to it or fix it based on the model.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
that might be just conflating a couple things. So absolutely, yes, the right idea, maybe not the right time.
Okay. Yeah. For sure, I see that.
Well, I don't know what comes after that. What comes after that?
The video.
Oh, what's the video about?
The video is, I think Rubner has that laser thing.
Yep.
It's basically a video of that, and it's showing it split and bend all the way around the 360 until it comes back to the direction that it was going as the object that it's refracting through turns. Yeah, so if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so take a double look at it, because if it's bending around, that could be a little conflicting.
If you're, because especially if you're teaching them that light travels in a straight line.
Yeah.
You know, because like if I'm looking at that other one of that laser going across the wallet, right? Like that makes sense because although the continuous line was broken.
Okay, that's right.
Smart learning for all.
Never mind. It's a magician with his wand and water.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And he gets upset because his wand breaks. And the guy pulls it out and he's like, oh.
Cool.
Okay.
So
That's
also that is very engaging. I might look to see what it is in STEM scopes. Like if it's more illustrative or not. I don't know. I haven't looked, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Here's a suggestion I might have.
Okay.
See what both of you think. I'm thinking about this more and more with science in general, which is rather than doing synonyms and antonyms in our Marzanos, I wonder if we do examples.